I sat 3 chairs from the end of the conference table with a blue folder across my knees and my thumbnail pressed into my palm. Not hard enough to bleed, hard enough to remind myself to stay still. That was the trick, staying still. The good conference room had glass walls, a long table, and a projector that clicked dryly every time the slide changed. Outside the glass, the office looked normal. Paper cups, copier light, the kind of morning where nothing looks dangerous yet. Inside that room, my career was being stolen in a navy suit. My boss stood at the head of the table with the remote in his hand and my project on the screen behind him. My work, my structure, my charts, my client objections, my ugly first drafts turned into clean language, my late nights, my cold dinners, my apartment carpet dotted with printed pages because I had spread the deck out on the floor, just to see if the argument had a spine. It did. That was why he wanted it. The client sat across from me, pen resting between 2 fingers. Beside him were 2 people from his team, both watching the screen like every slide had money attached to it. Our VP sat near the window. The project coordinator typed notes in bursts. And my boss, my direct boss, the man who had told me for months that I was essential, smiled like he had invented oxygen. He clicked to the second slide and said, "When I developed this approach, I wanted to focus less on noise and more on proof. When I developed this approach, there are sentences that do not sound violent until they land on something tender. That one landed on months. I looked at the title slide again, even though I already knew what it said. His name, his title, his department. No mention of me except on the agenda, buried under execution support. Execution support was the phrase he used when he wanted me close enough to do the work and fair, enough not to be seen doing it. I did not move. I did not reach for the folder. I did not say his name. I did not interrupt the performance. Because the worst thing you can do with a thief is stop him before he shows everyone what he thinks he can get away with. So I let him talk. I let him point at my risk model like he had not asked me 3 times what it meant. I let him explain the client pain points like he had not once called them too negative until the client reacted well to them. I let him laugh softly at his own line about market friction, a line I had written at 12:43 in the morning with burnt coffee beside my elbow. And I watched the client nod. That part hurt more than I expected. Not because the client was wrong. The work was good. It was good enough to be stolen. Before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand this. I was not a dramatic person. I did not slam doors. I did not make scenes. I was the woman they trusted with the hard things because I finished them cleanly, quietly, on time. Quiet had been mistaken for permission. That morning, I had decided to correct the mistake. But before that conference room, before the blue folder, before my boss destroyed himself with his own mouth, there was my desk. Not an office, nothing grand. A desk near the copier that jammed every Tuesday like it had religious beliefs. The carpet under my chair had a dark crescent where the wheels had worn it down. My monitor had 1 dead pixel. There was a chipped mug beside my keyboard with faded black lettering. I could barely read anymore. I loved that mug. Stupid, maybe. But if you have ever built a life out of small, tolerable things, you know exactly what I mean. The mug, the desk, the parking spot 3 rows from the side entrance, the copier cough, the smell of office donuts in the morning and printer toner in the afternoon. The way the building got cold after 6, like the heat belonged only to people with healthier boundaries. That was the shape of my life then. I was not trying to become a legend. I was trying to become visible. There is a difference. For months, the project had been mine in every way except the way that mattered on a title slide. The client account was important. Everyone knew that. The VP started attending meetings she usually skipped. My boss stopped taking long lunches. People lowered their voices around renewals and budgets. The client had been unhappy, not angry. Worse, tired. Tired client weave. My assignment sounded small at first. Build a clearer strategy deck. Organize the data. Pull together the research. Make the account team look prepared. My boss said it while standing beside my desk, one hand on the back of my chair, like we were both looking at the same harmless errand. "You know the material better than anyone," he said. That was true. "You are the only one I trust to make it tight." That was also true. Then he added, "I will handle the executive layer." That was the lie. At first, I thought he meant polish. Positioning. The kind of framing people at his level got paid too much to do while pretending not to need. The people below them. So I worked. I built the first version with too many slides, because first versions always have too much fear in them. I cut it down, moved the strongest recommendation earlier, took out anything that smelled like panic. I added a section that answered the client's objections before they asked them. Created a risk model that did not flatter us, which is why it worked. It made us look honest. My boss loved that after he hated it. The first time I showed it to him, he frowned at the screen and said, "This feels too exposed." I said, "It feels credible." He looked at me then, not angry, measuring. "Credible can still scare people," he said. "So can vague." He laughed, but not because it was funny. That was one of those almost human moments. He believed leadership meant absorbing the best work around him and calling that synthesis. He did not think of himself as a thief. That made him more dangerous. The weeks after that turned into a blur of edits. He would send comments late at night. Sharper. Too soft. Can we make this client-facing? Where is the story? I would stare at those comments until my eyes burned, and then do the real work beneath them. I made the deck sharper. I made it cleaner. I built the story he kept asking for but could not explain. Then his comments changed. Good. Strong. This is the direction. Do not circulate wider yet. I should have heard the lock click. I did not know then that the theft was already in motion. I thought I was being protected from too many opinions. I thought he wanted the work clean before the sharks came at it. I thought that when the room got important enough, he would say my name because he had to. That is the trap with being reasonable. You assume other people are operating inside some basic moral weather. Some people are not. The first clear sign came in a prep meeting 2 days before the client presentation. Not the big meeting. Not the glass room. A smaller room with a scratched table, 6 chairs, and a trash can full of empty coffee cups. The air smelled like old carpet and dry erase marker. Someone had drawn a crooked arrow on the whiteboard and never erased it all the way, so it hovered behind my boss like a faint accusation. The project coordinator sat near the door. A co-worker from the account team sat across from me. The VP joined for the first 15 minutes, which made everyone sit straighter. I had printed copies of the agenda because I still believed in paper when people were likely to. Rewrite history. My boss started by saying, "I want to walk everyone through where we landed." Where we landed. I noticed that too. Not where Claire landed, not where the team landed, where we landed. Corporate language is built for theft. It has soft edges. It lets people steal without fingerprints. He clicked through the deck while I sat beside him, adding context when he paused. At slide 5, he described the client's frustration using language from my notes. At slide 8, he explained the risk model badly, then glanced at me and said, "Claire can fill in the technical layer if needed." If needed. My jaw tightened. At slide 12, the VP leaned forward. "This is good," she said. "This is much better than the last version." My boss smiled. "Thank you. I think we are finally getting close to my vision. My vision. Not loud, not cruel in the obvious way. Just 2 words set down gently in front of witnesses." I looked around. The project coordinator looked at her laptop. The coworker suddenly became fascinated by his pen. The VP did not correct him because why would she? She had not watched me build the thing. She had only watched him own the room. There are humiliations that ask you to participate in them. That was one. He did not just take credit. He made me sit beside him and nod while he took it. Like a notary, like a prop. After the meeting, everyone stood. Chairs scraped. Laptops snapped shut. The VP told him, "Nice work," and left with her phone already at her ear. Nice work. My boss waited until the room emptied down to just the 2 of us. Then he gathered his papers slowly, calmly, like nothing had happened. "You were quiet in there," he said. I was listening. He smiled, small and managerial. "Do not take it personally. That is a phrase people use when they have done something personal and want the benefits of, pretending they have not." He came around the table and leaned one hand on the chair next to mine. "You know how this works," he said. "Leadership has to package the message. The client does not need a committee. They need confidence. I am not a committee." "I did not say you were. You said it was your vision." He sighed, and for half a breath, he looked tired, almost burdened, like I had disappointed him by noticing. "Claire," he said, "you are excellent. Truly. But you are still learning how visibility works. There is a difference between doing the work and owning the relationship." There it was. The philosophy. "The little shrine every office thief kneels in front of," I said. "And which one am I doing?" He did not answer right away. The projector fan clicked as it cooled down. He looked at the deck on the screen, still frozen on the final recommendation, and his face softened in a way that might have fooled me 6 months earlier. "I am trying to protect the account," he said. "And you. Me." He put me inside the excuse like a hostage. "How are you protecting me?" I asked. "By not putting you in a position where the client can tear into your model before you are ready." I stared at him. He actually believed that would work. The risk model he could not explain was suddenly too fragile for me to defend. The strategy he had called his vision was suddenly my training wheels when accountability got close. I should have been angry then. I was, somewhere underneath. But what I felt first was clarity, cold, almost clean. He was not going to say my name unless someone made him. And no one in that office was coming to make him. Only me. My boss closed his laptop and said, "Tomorrow, send me the final file. I will make the last pass before the client meeting. The final file is already in the shared folder. I need my own copy." Why? That was the first time his face changed. Not much. Just a small tightening around the eyes. "Because I am presenting it." I nodded. One nod. That was all I gave him. He mistook it for agreement because men like him survive by misreading women on purpose. That night, I went back to my desk after most people had left. The office, after hours, smelled dusty. Electric. Half the overhead lights were off. Rows of desks looked abandoned. I sat down and opened the shared project folder. At first, I was only looking for an older chart. That is the part I still think about. How ordinary the beginning of the end was. I was not planning to take down. I was tired, hungry, and annoyed because the client had asked for a version of a chart I had moved 3 drafts ago. The folder loaded slowly. I clicked through the files, draft names, dates, final, clean, final client. The usual office lies. Then I saw it. A duplicate deck created 2 nights earlier. Same file size, almost. Same slide count. Same structure. Different title. Different owner. For a few seconds, I just looked at it. The office made tiny sounds around me. Air through vents. Elevator ding far away. A cleaning cart bumping softly against a door frame. I clicked once. The deck opened. My work filled the screen. Only the first slide had changed. My name was gone. His name sat there clean and centered, like it had always belonged. I did not gasp. I did not cry. I did not throw the mug. I just sat there, feeling something inside me go very, very quiet. But what I found in the project folder changed everything. And it was not just the stolen title slide. It was the trail he forgot to erase. I moved the cursor over the file name and opened the version history. That sounds clean. Version history, like a drawer with labels, like a harmless office feature. It is not harmless when someone thinks nobody will ever look. The side panel opened slowly, 1 timestamp at a time. Gray text, blue names, tiny edits stacked like layers of dirt. My name was everywhere. Created by Claire. Edited by Claire. Comment added by Claire. Chart replaced by Claire. Recommendation section. Revised by Claire. Then his name appeared later. Not at the beginning. Not in the bones. Near the end. Like a man walking into a house after the framing, wiring, plumbing, roof, and walls are done. Then hanging a photograph of himself in the hallway and calling it architecture. I clicked back through the earlier drafts. There was my ugly first version with too many slides and nervous language. There was the second version, where I had cut the panic out and moved the strongest argument forward. There was the third, where the risk model finally started to breathe. There were his comments attached to my work, like fingerprints. Expand this. Make this sharper. Can this be more client-ready? This is strong. Do not circulate wider yet. The document did not care that my stomach hurt. It did not care that I had trusted him. It just told the truth in timestamps. That was the first time I understood why documentation matters. Not because systems are fair. They are not. But a timestamp does not get intimidated in a conference room. A file history does not laugh nervously and change the subject. It sits there and says, "No, this happened first." I opened the stolen copy again. His name on the title slide. His initials in the file owner field. His polished little title under the project name. Then I opened the original. My name in the first metadata field. My comments, my drafts, my structure. 2 files side by side, same body, different costume. I wanted to call him right then. I wanted to ask him what kind of coward steals from someone sitting 30 feet away. That would have been a mistake. Anger wants speed. Evidence wants patience. So I did not call. I did not email. I opened a blank document and started writing down what I had: file names, creation dates, edit dates, comment, timestamps, the moment my name disappeared, the moment his appeared. Every place where he had treated my work as mine before taking it. At 8:13 in the evening, the cleaning crew came through. A trash bin rattled softly over the carpet seam. I minimized the folder out of instinct, then hated myself for it. I was the one with proof. He was the one hiding. Still, my body behaved like I had been caught. That is what workplaces like that teach you: to feel guilty for noticing what is being done to you. I stayed another hour, not because there was so much to collect, because I needed to be careful. The version history had export options. I used them. I saved a copy of the activity log. I printed the key pages. Not all of them, because too much paper starts to look like panic. I printed the first draft showing my name as creator. I printed the comment thread where he told me not to circulate wider. I printed the duplicated file record showing him as owner after my work had already been built. The printer smelled hot. The pages came out warm, curling at the edges. 1, 2, 3. Not revenge yet, inventory. The evidence said something I still cannot forget, not in one sentence, but in the pattern. He had not made one bad decision in a moment of pressure. He had walked toward it over days, carefully, calmly. He had praised the work while planning the theft. He had asked me to make it stronger because he intended to stand on it. That was worse than the title slide. The next morning, he came to my desk holding a coffee he had clearly bought for himself and forgotten to drink. "Final deck looks good," he said. The office was filling in around us. Keyboards, chair wheels, the copier already blinking its red error light like a warning. "Good," I said. He watched my face for something. Anger, maybe. Fear. An accusation he could discipline me for. I gave him nothing. I made a few executive adjustments, he said. "I saw." A tiny pause. His mouth moved into the shape of a smile, but it did not arrive all the way. "You okay?" There it was. Control disguised as concern. "Yes. You seemed a little tense yesterday. I was thinking through the client questions." "That is good," he said. "You should be ready to support if they go deep." Support? I almost laughed. Instead, I pressed my thumbnail into my palm once under the desk where he could not see it. He lowered his voice. "Claire, I know you care about this, but tomorrow needs to be clean. No mixed messaging. No stepping on each other. Let me lead, and I will make sure your contribution is understood internally." Internally. The word landed like a locked door. Understood? By who? I asked. He blinked. "What?" "You said internally. Understood by who?" He glanced toward the hallway. Not scared. Irritated that I had made him precise. The right people. The VP? Yes, among others. "Will my name be on the client deck?" His face hardened for less than a second. Then the manager mask came back down. "The client does not need org chart clutter," he said. "They need confidence. Same argument. New wrapping." I nodded again. He took that nod the way he had taken my work, as something useful he had earned. "Great," he said. "Let us stay aligned." After he walked away, I opened my calendar and studied the client meeting invite. Names matter, rooms matter, witnesses matter. The invite showed everyone who would be there. My boss, the VP, the client, 2 client-side team members, the project coordinator, me. Enough. Not a crowd, not a spectacle. A room of people who mattered to the lie. If you are still listening, this is where it turns. I stopped trying to make him confess. Confessions are gifts. People like him do not give gifts unless there is an invoice attached. I needed something cleaner. I needed him to make a claim in front of people who could compare that claim to proof. So, I prepared for the question. Every presentation has a weak seam, a moment where the room asks who actually understands what is on the screen. In our deck, that seam was the risk model. He could gesture at it. He could say exposure and forecast and client confidence. He could survive the surface. But he could not explain why the model weighted client fatigue higher than competitor pricing. He could not explain why slide 12 mattered. I could, so I built the folder around slide 12. First tab, original draft metadata. Second tab, comment history. Third tab, duplicate file record. Fourth tab, the meeting agenda, where I was assigned to support the execution details. Fifth tab, a 1-page summary of the risk model in plain English. Not for him, for the room. I did not want to look frantic. I wanted to look like someone who had brought a seatbelt because she knew the driver was drunk. At lunch, I took the printed pages to a quiet table in the cafeteria. The place smelled like reheated soup and burned cheese. A vending machine hummed beside the wall. I read every page again with a pen in my hand, circling only what mattered. Too much evidence can become fog. I needed a blade, a creation timestamp, a comment from him praising the section as mine, a file owner change, the agenda line minimizing me. 4 pieces, clean enough for anyone to understand in under 30 seconds. The project coordinator walked by with a salad container and slowed. "Big day tomorrow," she said. "Yeah. You ready?" "I am getting there." She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the executive hallway. "I thought you did a lot of the deck," she said quietly. "I did," I said. She nodded once. Not a promise, not testimony, but recognition. Sometimes recognition is the first crack in the wall. I asked her, "Can you send me the final agenda that went to the client? I want to make sure I am prepared for my sections." "Sure." 5 minutes later, it hit my inbox. There it was in black and white. My boss listed as strategy lead. Me, it listed under execution support. The words looked smaller on the page than they felt in my chest. I printed that too. The office printer jammed halfway through. Of course it did. I stood there with the side panel open, pulling out a torn sheet, smelling toner and warm plastic. For one ridiculous second, I thought, this machine and I have the same problem. We both keep being asked to produce clean pages after someone feeds us crooked paper. I fixed the jam. I put the agenda behind the 4th tab. That afternoon, my boss called a quick prep huddle. Not a meeting, he said. Just a huddle. He loved shrinking words when he wanted people to treat important things casually. "We keep it tight tomorrow," he said. "The client is nervous, so confidence matters. I will own the strategy narrative. Claire, you are there if we need details." "If we need details." The coworker nodded. The project coordinator looked at her notes. "I want 0 surprises," he said. That almost did it. I almost said, "Then you should have stolen cleaner." Instead, I said, "Understood." He smiled. He thought he had trained me. That night, I did one more thing. I rehearsed the sentence. Not in the mirror. I am not a movie character. I rehearsed it sitting at my kitchen table with the blue folder open beside a glass of water I never drank. I built the risk model. Too soft. The original drafts show I developed this. Too defensive. My name was removed from the title slide after the work was complete. Too much. Too soon. I kept cutting. The line had to be simple enough that he could not interrupt it into pieces. By midnight, I had it. I did. And I can prove that with the original drafts, timestamps, and the comment history where you requested revisions on my work before replacing my name with yours. I said it once, then again, not louder, cleaner. The apartment was quiet except for the refrigerator clicking on and faint traffic outside. The pages in the folder looked ordinary under the kitchen light. That bothered me. Proof should glow, it should hum, it should announce itself. It does not. Proof is usually boring. That is why liars underestimate it. They expect fury. They prepare for tears. They prepare for accusations they can call emotional. They do not prepare for paper. The next morning, I got to the office early. Not first. My boss was already there. Of course he was. Men like that love arriving early on the day they plan to be admired. His office light was on. Through the glass, I could see him standing at his desk, practicing with one hand moving in small, confident arcs. He had the stolen deck open on his monitor. For a moment, I stopped walking. I watched him rehearse my work. He leaned slightly forward, smiled, clicked, paused. He was good at looking prepared. He had the posture of someone who had never been asked to show the math behind his certainty. He looked up and saw me. Our eyes met through the glass. He lifted his coffee cup in a little salute. Friendly. Possessive. Like we were on the same team and he had not spent the week teaching me exactly where I stood. I sat at my desk and checked the packet one final time. Tabs aligned, copies clean, no extra pages, no emotional notes, no underlined insults. Nothing that could make me look sloppy. Then I opened the original deck and copied one more thing onto a separate sheet. The comment where he had written, "This is strong. Do not circulate wider yet." I stared at that line for a long time. It was not necessary for the mechanics. I already had enough, but I put it in the folder anyway. Because someday, if I started doubting myself, I wanted to remember that he knew it was strong when it still had my name on it. At 9:40 in the morning, the project coordinator stopped by my desk. "They are setting up the room," she said. "Thanks." She glanced at the folder, then back at me. "You good?" There was more in the question than office politeness. I said, "I am prepared." She nodded slowly. Prepared is not the same as good. Prepared is what you are when good is no longer available. At 9:55 in the morning, I walked toward the good conference room. The blue folder felt heavier than paper. The hallway carpet swallowed the sound of my heels. Through the glass walls, I could see the client team arriving, shaking hands, setting down notebooks and phones. The VP stood near the window, smiling that careful executive smile people use when money is nervous. My boss saw me enter and stepped closer before anyone else could hear. "Remember," he said softly, "let me steer." I looked at him. For 1 second I saw it. Not fear. Not yet. But a flicker of need. He needed me to obey the shape of the room he had built. He needed me to stay in the corner of my own work. I said, "Of course," and I walked past him to my chair. Not the head of the table. Not yet. 3 chairs from the end. Close enough to be dismissed. Close enough to reach the table when the time came. The conference room smelled like rainwater, old carpet, and expensive coffee. Nobody actually drank. That was the thing about the good room. It always looked clean from outside the glass. Polished table, white walls, big screen, chairs that rolled without squeaking. But once you sat down, you could smell all the meetings that had happened before yours. Stress trapped in fabric, burnt coffee in paper cups, the faint chemical bite of whiteboard cleaner. My boss took the head of the table like gravity put him there. The VP sat to his right, near the window, her laptop open and angled just enough so nobody could read it. The client sat across from the screen with one person from his team on either side. The project coordinator sat near the door, hands already on her keyboard. I sat where I had been placed, 3 chairs down, close enough to answer questions, far enough to be labeled support. On the table in front of my boss was one copy of the printed agenda. On the table in front of me was nothing. The blue folder stayed on my lap. He noticed that. I saw his eyes drop to it once, quick, then come back to my face. "What is that?" he asked softly while the client team settled in. "Backup materials." His smile stayed where it was, but something behind it tightened. "Good," he said. "Hopefully we will not need them." That was the first honest thing he said all morning. He started strong. I will give him that. Because lying about everything makes you sound desperate, and I was done being desperate. He was good at rooms. He knew how to warm his voice without sounding fake. He knew when to move closer to the screen and when to step back like he was letting the idea breathe. He knew how to say we when he wanted credit and the team when he wanted protection. The first few slides went clean. The client listened. The VP nodded. "The project coordinator typed." The rain tapped the glass behind them in thin little clicks. My boss clicked to the market overview and said, "The way I looked at this was simple. We do not win by overwhelming your team with more information. We win by identifying the pressure points that actually matter." My sentence? Not word for word from the final draft, but mine in the bones. I watched the client write something down. That hurt. Not because the client believed him. The client had no reason not to. That was the sick elegance of it. Theft works best when the stolen thing still performs. Slide 5, slide 6, slide 7. He moved through the deck like he had earned it. At slide 8, he mispronounced the name of one internal category I had created. Small mistake, almost nothing. But the project coordinator looked up. Just once. I saw it. So did he. He corrected himself and kept going. Before I tell you what happened next, understand that I was not waiting for applause. I was waiting for the room to need the truth. There is a difference. If I had opened that folder too early, he would have made it about attitude, timing, professionalism. He would have turned proof into drama and me into the problem. So I let him keep walking. He clicked to slide 12. The risk model. The one section he could not fake if someone pushed past the vocabulary. He stood a little straighter. That was how I knew he felt the weakness, too. "This model," he said, "helps us prioritize exposure areas by impact and urgency." Not wrong, and not enough. The client leaned forward. "And how did you weight client fatigue against competitor pricing here?" Was a small question, clean and technical, the kind of question that does not know it, is holding a knife. My boss put both hands lightly on the back of the chair in front of him. "Well," he said, "we looked at multiple indicators across the account. We. The VP glanced at him. The client waited. My boss clicked once, even though the slide did not need to move. The screen jumped forward. Then he clicked back. A tiny mistake. The remote made a dry plastic sound. We considered behavior patterns, engagement drop-off, the usual signals. He said. The usual signals. There were no usual signals in that model. That had been the entire point. I felt the folder on my lap. Heavy, flat, ready. The client turned his head slightly toward me. Claire, right? Yes. You are listed for execution support. Can you speak to the model? My boss opened his mouth. I did not look at him. Yes, I said. I can. The VP's eyes moved to me. The project coordinator stopped typing. I stood slowly. Not dramatic. Just enough to reach the table. The model weights client fatigue higher than competitor pricing because the account data showed disengagement before price sensitivity. The issue was not that your team was shopping around first. It was that they were tired of making the same objections and hearing the same broad assurances back. The client's pen stopped. I continued. That is why the recommendation moves away from a larger pitch deck and toward proof by sequence. One pressure point answered at a time. Less volume, more credibility. The client nodded once. My boss said, exactly. That is what I was getting at. That was his mistake. Not the theft, not the title slide. Those were old mistakes by then. His mistake was grabbing for my answer while everyone was still looking at me. The client looked between us. So who develops the model? The question sat there, plain and unadorned. My boss inhaled. I opened the blue folder. The sound of the cover lifting was small. Paper brushing paper. Almost nothing. But every person at that table heard it. I did, I said. And I can proof that with the original drafts, timestamps, and the comment history, where you requested revisions on my work before replacing my name with yours. I placed the first packet in front of the client, then the second in front of the VP. I did not throw them. I did not slide them like a movie. I set them down like meeting materials. Because that was what they were. My boss said my name, just my name, Claire. Not angry. Warning. I looked at him then. That is the original file record, I said. Created under my name. The next page shows your comments on my draft. The page after that shows the duplicate file created 2 nights ago, with your name added as. Owner and mine removed from the title slide. The VP reached for the packet first. That mattered. Executives do not touch paper unless they think it can hurt them. My boss laughed. A terrible choice. Short, dry, too loud for the size of the room. This is a misunderstanding, he said. Nobody helped him. That was the first real consequence. Not punishment. Exposure. The naked second after a man says misunderstanding and everyone is holding the map. The client flipped to the second page. The project coordinator looked down at her laptop, then back up at me. Not shocked. More like she had been waiting for a fact to match what she already suspected. The VP read silently. My boss shifted his weight. I want to be very careful here, he said. This is an internal process issue, not something we need to put in front of the client. The client looked up. I disagree, he said. 4 words, calm and brutal. My boss's face changed then. Not destroyed. Not yet. Smaller. Like someone had turned down the lights behind his eyes. The client tapped the printed comment history with 1 finger. This says you asked her to expand the model last week. My boss swallowed. Yes, as part of the broader strategic. And this says the original file was created by her. That is common. Team members often. And this version has your name on it. A pause. Rain touched the glass. Someone's phone buzzed on the table and nobody reached for it. The VP said, "Did you remove Claire's name from the deck?" That was the first question that mattered internally. My boss looked at her, then at me, then at the client. "I streamlined the presentation for external clarity," he said. There it was again, the philosophy, the polished excuse. External clarity, org chart clutter, confidence, packaging, all the pretty words people use when the ugly word is theft. The VP's mouth tightened. "Did you remove her name?" she asked again. He did not answer. That answered it. What he did next still makes my hands shake when I think about it. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was so small. He turned to me and said, "You should have come to me privately, like the crime was not the theft, like the crime was choosing witnesses." I looked at him and said, "You made it public when you presented my work as yours. That was not the blade line." Not really. The blade had already landed. But that sentence cut the rope. The client closed the packet. "I would like Claire to walk us through the rest of the model," he said. My boss reached for the remote. The client did not raise his voice. "I would prefer she lead this section." The remote stayed in my boss's hand for 1 second too long. Then he set it on the table. Plastic against wood. A small, cheap sound. I picked it up. "I want you to remember the phrase execution, support, because that was what they called me right before I became the only person in the room who could finish the meeting." I walked through slide 12, then slide 13. Then the recommendation sequence. I answered every question the client asked, not perfectly polished, not charming. I did not need charming. I had the work. At one point, the VP asked, "Can you explain why the final recommendation moved earlier in the deck?" "Yes," I said. "Because if we waited until the end, it looked like we were hiding the answer behind analysis. The client needed to see the recommendation early, then see that the evidence supported it." The client said, "That is exactly right." My boss sat back in his chair. No notes, no interruptions. For the first time since I had known him, he had nothing useful to take. The meeting ended without handshakes feeling normal. People still shook hands because business has rituals, even when the altar is on fire. The client thanked the VP. Then he turned to me. "Send the follow-up directly," he said. "I want you on the next working session." My boss smiled through that like it was dental work. "Absolutely," he said. "We will coordinate internally." The client looked at him. With Claire leading the model discussion, he said, "Not a request, a condition." After they left, the room felt too bright. The donuts on the sideboard looked stale and childish. The projector still showed the final slide, my work glowing under his name. The VP stayed seated. The project coordinator stayed too. My boss gathered his papers too fast. The VP said, "Leave those." He stopped. "What?" "The printed deck. Leave it. I need to make some corrections." "No," she said. "You do not." That was when I saw the first tangible piece fall out of his hands. Control. People talk about reputation like it is smoke. It is not. In an office, reputation is access. Who gets copied, who gets invited, who gets believed without proof. That morning, his access started closing. The VP asked the project coordinator to send her the meeting notes and the final agenda. Then she asked me to send the original deck history to her directly. My boss said, "I think we should discuss this before anything gets escalated." The VP looked at him with a kind of tired disgust I recognized. "We are discussing it." He turned to me again. "Claire, this is going to damage the team." "No," I said. "It already did." He had no answer for that either. By the end of the day, he was removed from the client account. Not quietly enough to protect him. Not loudly enough to become gossip theater. But everyone who needed to know, knew. The updated client packet went out with my name on the sections I built. The next working session invite came from the VP, not him. I was listed as the lead for the model discussion. He was not listed at all. His promotion, the one everyone knew was coming, did not happen. The announcement got delayed, then delayed again, then replaced by a vague note about leadership structure and account continuity. Office language, yes. But this time it worked against him. He lost the account. He lost the clean story of himself. He lost the automatic belief people had been handing him for years. And maybe the sharpest loss of all, he lost the right to stand near my work and be assumed responsible for it. But the real consequence was not what happened to him. It was what stopped happening to me. No more support on strategy calls where I had written the strategy. No more private praise and public erasure. No more soft little warnings about alignment. People still tried office politics, because offices do not become holy just because one thief gets caught. But they got more careful around me. Good. Careful was fair. A week later, I cleaned my desk. Not because I was leaving, but because I was staying differently. I threw away old sticky notes, dead pens, printed drafts with coffee rings on them. I wiped the toner dust from the corner of my keyboard. I washed the chipped mug in the break room sink and brought it back warm in my hand. On my desk, beside the mug, I put the blue folder. Not hidden, not displayed like a trophy. Just there. A fact. Inside it, I kept one page I did not send to the VP. One page that was not needed anymore. The comment from him. "This is strong. Do not circulate wider yet." I had printed it the morning of the meeting, and at the time I thought it was evidence. Later, it became something else. A message from the version of him who still needed me to make the work better before he could steal it. A last little accidental confession. He knew it was strong. He knew it was mine. He knew before he took it. That line should have made me feel worse. It did not. It freed me from the final excuse I had been making for him. He had not misunderstood. He had not gotten swept up in executive pressure. He had not forgotten my contribution in the rush of client politics. He saw the value clearly. That was why he reached for it. After the client meeting, the VP called me into her office. I expected stiffness, damage control, some speech about professionalism and difficult situations. Instead, she pointed to a chair. "Sit." I sat. She looked older than she had in the conference room. Not kinder, just less polished. "I should have asked more questions about ownership," she said. I did not rescue her from that sentence. Old me would have? Old me would have smiled and said, "It is okay, because women are trained to mop up discomfort even when someone else spills it." I let the sentence sit. She nodded like she understood that too. "The account wants you on the next phase," she said. "You will lead the model work directly. Your name will be on the materials." "Good," I said. Just that. Good. She looked at me for a second, maybe surprised I did not add "thank you" fast enough to make her comfortable. She said, "Good." When I walked back to my desk, My boss office door was closed. The blinds were half pulled. Through the narrow gap, I could see him standing with his hands on the back of his chair, staring at nothing. For one moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Not because he deserved it, but because seeing someone lose the thing they used to hurt you is still heavy. Revenge sounds clean when people talk about it online. In real life, it smells like conference room carpet and cold coffee. It leaves your hands tired. But I was glad. I was not happy. I was glad. There is a difference. Happy is light. Glad is solid, and glad has weight. Glad can stand up in low heels after a client meeting and carry a blue folder back to a desk. That no longer feels like a place where your name goes to die. My desk did not look different after that. Same copier, same dead pixel, same parking spot. 3 rows from the side entrance, same mug with faded black letters. But I was different at it. That matters. A few days later, the project coordinator stopped by and placed a clean copy of the revised deck on my desk. My name was on the title slide under the model section. Not huge, not glittering, just present. I ran my hand over the paper once and felt the raised warmth from the printer ink. My name, small thing, whole thing. I put the copy in a folder with the old comment and closed it. Then I picked up my mug, took a sip of bad break room coffee, and opened the client follow-up file. There was work to do. Mine, this time, and everybody knew it. So tell me this. What proof did you keep when someone thought you were too quiet, too tired, or too scared to use it?